the situation with Sport Haven Beach, and I was curious because I had a constituent that said he'd had inconsistent experiences with being allowed on the beach after 10 p.m. And so I wanted to find out what the rules were. We had a prior discussion at this board, a year or so ago, and Commissioner Patterson and John Brazil spoke, but it left me a little confused still. So I reviewed the files, and I found that the state parks and the board agree that the Sport Haven Beach is in fact owned by the port. However, the state owns a conservation easement below the statutory line or the high vegetation line, whichever is higher. And that easement does allow the beach bill to apply to the beach according to parks. And so their position is that access to the sandy part of the beach is 24/7, 365, but not through the port properties where we have them closed. So if you're on the beach, then you would be legal, but you couldn't park on the port because we're closed at 10, and you couldn't access through the port. So they describe that as north-south access, but not east-west access across the port property. In their position, the port staff feels, or some of the port staff that I talked to, feels that camping should not be allowed because there's OAR 736-10, which says that camping's not allowed next to parks. The Parks Department feels that that is applicable only to state parks like Harris or other designated state parks. So their position, as far as I understand them, is that camping is allowed. For fires, they have contracted, the state parks has jurisdiction and has contracted with Coos Forest Protective Association for fire suppression on the beach, and then they have some kind of cooperative agreement between Coos and Harbor Fire with regard to that. Fires are allowed 3 foot by 3 foot. They must be 25 feet from entrances and 25 feet from driftwood accumulations. And when there is what Coos calls no fires, then there's no fires because of fire danger. So that was Ocean Shores rules. And I don't know if we need to have a workshop on this and discuss port policy, or if Gary feels that this is consistent with port policy, or what, but I just wanted to report for today that I had these discussions, and that's my understanding, and I guess I'd ask Gary if that's consistent with what he's doing.
I think it is.
Okay, so I don't know that we need a workshop or anything if everybody's comfortable with that. I would add, if we did want to prohibit camping there, under OAR 736-030, we can petition parks to prohibit camping, and that would go through a public rulemaking process. So if the board did feel that camping was a problem there is a mechanism to put an end to it.
Okay, I'm going to make a comment, and I think you better do some more research, because that rule was made from this jetty to no camping, jetty to the hole in the rock about 10 years ago, because the transient population that was sleeping on the beach down here. And that rule was brought through the state of Oregon by Mr. Snazig and Russ Crabtree at the time.
Okay, I can just tell you, having spoken with the enforcement officer for Ocean Shores, their position is that there is no rule in place. So, and they have since, they recently, in response to, I'm not sure if it came through the legislature or if it was public complaint, but they recently put the list of all all the areas that are closed to camping and the ocean shores has been added to their website, and it's mostly cities like in Newport and Bandon, in addition to the state parks like Harris. So we're not on their list. The specialist there has no record of it, but we can certainly, I'll call him and reconfirm, but he was very clear with me on it, on the phone. So, this was Callum Stevenson that I spoke with, and incidentally, there is a ranger for enforcement. His name, I don't know if it's a he or a she, RJ Rapelje, 541-294-0644. So if we need to have enforcement on the beach, that's our mechanism. I'll forward that contact information to you. So.
You're only talking about the part that's below what we own.
Correct. Well, we own,
Below
this is a
median water.
strange situation. We actually own to the extreme low water line,
Right.
but they have the conservation easement from the statutory high vegetation line or the actual high vegetation line, whichever is higher, and that allows them to apply the ocean shore rules and ensure access. So basically, we control the parking area, the road, the RV park, everything inland from the sand, and they control, we own it, but they control the sandy portion below the riprap and so on.
I think, Jan, you better do some more research, because that's not how I read the thing from the state of Oregon. When they fought over who had the fire rights, who fought the fires on that part of the beach and who had control. The letter we got from the state parks does not sound like that.
Well, I have read every letter in the file that we have, and they're very consistent that they control that area. So maybe we need a workshop. It sounds like we do need a workshop. I think that's the.
What's the issue?
The issue is if people can use that part of the beach without being unduly disturbed, if they can camp, have fires, and 24/7, 365 access, or if we have a right to restrict that.
Have we had a lot of complaints?
Yeah, we haven't had any complaints to the port office about wanting to camp on the beach that I'm aware of. You know, we'd had complaints years ago when there's parties and the impacting the RV park, but we haven't had any problems since that time, because we've been removing everybody that parks in the RV park, so they would have to travel wherever down the beach. But
We're just talking about the people who have traveled wherever down the beach, or maybe they got there by boat, or however they got there, but they're there after 10.
hopefully they go by boat, they'll have troubles with the Coast Guard.
So they can't cross our
I've seen that.
property, they can't cross our property, but they're out there, and as long as they stay there till 7, you know, I don't know how common this is. I just know I have a constituent that says he's had the police called on him, and had issues, so.
How does Harris Beach restrict their beach then? Their beach restricted,
Because
right?
they are a state park, so they come under OAR 736 ONO. So that's their situation.
Plus, don't they lock the whole beach down too, that gate
Right,
at dusk?
yeah, but they have a specific rulemaking that.
But they also have a park ranger right there as well.
They have a park ranger right there as well.
You gotta- How are you gonna get to the beach?
If they're on there,
But they gotta come through Sazix, right? Okay,
Or the jetty.
I'm sure they're not gonna let anybody through.
they have to.
And the jetty,
That's-
they're gonna be able to go down the jetty, isn't that part of the port property?
That's federal property.
The issue here. Well, okay.
So Gary, to answer you, according to the state,
Who cares?
The Best Western property, it's no longer Snazix, but the Best Western property is the same situation as the port property. They own it to the extreme low water line, but the Ocean Shores, the Beach Act and everything creates the exact same situation on their property as ours. However, Callum did caution that in their case, what appears to be beach, a lot of it is actually above the statutory line. So it is possible on Best Western to be on the part that they do control. He said there's a kind of a bluff. If you're down at the water line looking back towards the hotel, you can see it. It's a bit of a bluff, and that, he says, this line runs along that bluff. It's essentially an extension of the riprap line across the rest of the beach. So if you're down by the water, it's they can't restrict you. If you're up into their portion of the beach, they can. So unless you have a surveyor come and stake that out, I'm not sure you'll know exactly where it is. But they can't stop somebody from walking north-south along that part of the beach, as long as they're down by the water.
You want somebody in a tent camping down there?
Why not?
Thank you.
Public land.
Roy, did you, I'm sorry, Dan, were you done?
I have two other quick items. I'm gonna wanna look at the ordinances. I went to the county clerk's office and I saw there's a stack of ordinances about this thick, and I went to our office and asked to see all the ordinances, and we apparently don't have them all. So I'm in a future meeting or future agenda item, I'd like to review the status of all our